Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 468 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. What I think football teaches you is that there are different situations and different scenarios that dictate how a game goes and how a game should go. Not all games feel the same. Not all games end the same way. Every game is dictated by situation and dictated by circumstance. That point could not have been clearer than in the Monday Night Football game between the Buccaneers and Chiefs. When you're playing a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, you have to understand situation and you have to understand circumstance. That's one thing outside of having arguably the best player of all time in Patrick Mahomes and having one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in football. That's one thing that the Kansas City Chiefs have done perfectly this year. They've understood situation, and they've understood circumstance in every game that they've played. Some games were easier than others, but they understood the moment. They understood that our circumstances are different than everyone else's because of the resources that we have that other people don't. Other teams do not have Patrick Mahomes. Other teams don't have Chris Jones. Other teams don't have Andy Reid or Spags. We have the circumstances that can help us in situations that it may not be able to help other people. Well, in Monday Night Football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers found themselves in a situation that could have drastically changed not just the game, but the outcome of the game. Before we talk about the game a little bit, let's talk about the circumstances and the situations that the Buccaneers have been dealt with. The Buccaneers have been a much better team than I thought they would be this year, especially when you see the injuries that they've sustained, whether we talk about Mike Evans, whether we talk about the season-ending injuries to Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield, I think, has been much better. In fact, the question, I talked about this last episode, the question with Baker Mayfield was, is he going to be able to replicate what happened last year? Or was last year considered a quote-unquote fluke? Was it considered a quote-unquote miracle season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Baker Mayfield has been incredible. He's had his moments, his Baker moments, but essentially he is the main reason why this team is or looked as good as looked this year. While yes, as of right now they have a record under 500. A lot of that is due to the circumstance that they've been dealt with. It's very hard when you lose your top wide receiver, let alone your top two wide receivers. And you have a lot of aging pieces that have been in and out the lineup in the defense, but the defense is still good for the Buccaneers. But that brings us back to Monday Night Football. Ryan Clark said it, and I agree wholeheartedly. The Kansas City Chiefs, not only do they not feel unbeatable, but when you look at how the games have gone, and you look at how this season has gone, it is a testament to how this team is 8-0. It's a testament to how this team has been able to essentially squeak out games. Usually when you get to this point and you play teams like the Buccaneers, you play teams like the Baltimore Ravens, your record should not reflect or should not, I'll say it like this. You are what your record is, but the Chiefs being 8-0 does not reflect how this season has essentially gone. What it should reflect is the Kansas City Chiefs have taken advantage of the situations and the moments at hand. Monday Night Football, we don't even need to talk about the entire game. We need to talk about essentially the last possession that the Buccaneers had. The second to last, because the last one didn't really count. It was about 20 seconds left or whatever. But the last scoring drive that the Bucs had, you go down and you score a touchdown with like 27 seconds left of the game. Situation and circumstance. You can either A, kick a field goal or kick an extra point, which ties the game, which you hope that obviously, which we've seen, but you hope that the Kansas City Chiefs don't go down in 27 seconds and get into scoring range or get into field goal range, and you essentially dictate the fate of your team in overtime. Or you can go for it, go for two, and you have the lead. So now that puts all the pressure on the Kansas City Chiefs for 27 seconds. Now, I'm not saying that they couldn't do it, but the situation, the feeling is different. And that is kind of the overarching theme of this portion. The Buccaneers elected to kick the extra point, go into overtime, lose the coin toss, which if you want to know exactly it's funny. Baker Mayfield knew the fate of the team when they lost the coin toss, and he just looked up like, Jesus, man. And then the Chiefs essentially don't give the Buccaneers the ball back, and they score, winning the game. All of that overtime could have been avoided if they would have possibly went for two, got two, because they had momentum at that time, and just held on for 27 seconds. What I mean by you have to understand situation is this. The Kansas City Chiefs is a situation. Let me explain what I'm talking about. You're going up against arguably the best player in football. You're going up against a team that to this point has not lost a game. You're going against a team that has shown through this game. Let's just talk. Through this game, they've shown that they can score when they need to. Even though the Bucs did a good job majority of the night. And you're going against a team that has shown that if they make it to overtime, 9 times out of 10 they're going to win, especially if they get the ball first. This win is a credit because I don't know if I've said it, but the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Buccaneers 30-24 in overtime. This win is a credit to the Kansas City Chiefs and their resolve and their understanding of who their team is. And it's also a reflection of the Buccaneers not understanding situation. I'm not going to say not understanding situation, but not being as aggressive as they should be in situations. Because here's the thing. Whether they would have lost in overtime or lost because they went for two and didn't get it, they would have lost. The outcome would have still been the same. And this is one of those rare times where I don't feel people would have really killed Todd Bowles or the Bucs if they would have went for it for 2, because they understand who they're playing. They understand the situation on the other side of the ball. You're going against the the back-to-back defending champions. I'm not saying anybody should, I'm not saying there should be any jobs that should be lost or whatever. What I'm saying is, we never know what could have happened or what would have happened if you went for it. He could have got it, could have not. They may have held the Chiefs. Who knows? But I will say this. In a game that saw DeAndre Hopkins pretty much emerge as the number one receiver, had like 86 yards, 2 touchdowns. In a game that saw Kareem Hunt had 27 carries for 106 yards and the game-winning touchdown. In a game that had Travis Kelce have his first game of the season go over 100 yards. In a game where Patrick Mahomes throws 3 touchdowns. The fate of this game was decided by a team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't want to say be scared, but I want to say not take hold of the situation at hand and not be aggressive. And now you have one team in the Buccaneers that is 4-5, under 500. And the Kansas City Chiefs are 8-0. And I'm not going to say a fraudulent 8-0 because you are what your record is. I'm not going to disrespect them, but they don't feel unbeatable. They just have not been beaten. That is a testament to the Chiefs. So shouts out to the Chiefs for beating the Buccaneers 30-24 in overtime. It is officially, I will say it like this. If there was any hope for this Dallas Cowboys season, I think that hope should be dashed. I think this is the official time, the official moment where any hope for this season should be lost. First of all, I don't think there should have been much hope in the first place. And I'm not just saying this as a Commanders fan. I'm saying this as just look at the transactions or lack of transactions there have been when we talk about this Cowboys franchise in the last few seasons. But this, it's hard to say when you see a team lose to the Saints as they did or lose to the Ravens as they did. It's hard to say that this game, losing to the Falcons 27-21, this game was the rock bottom game. I say it was the rock bottom game because every aspect of the game, every aspect, it didn't seem like the Cowboys looked competent. Whether you talk about offensive execution, whether you talk about fourth down execution, whether you talk about fourth down defense, whether you talk about defense in general, it just felt like, even though the score is close, it didn't feel like this game was close at all. And on top of that, Dak Prescott goes out with a hand injury and a hamstring injury and now is being put on IR. So you're hoping that Cooper Rush is going to be the guy, which should be a huge indictment against Trey Lance. Like, it's crazy. But when you look at the execution that the Falcons displayed compared to the lack of execution that the Cowboys displayed. To me, this is the rock bottom. They just didn't look. They looked predictable. They looked bad. They didn't look ill. They looked ill prepared. There was not a. How do I say this? There was not a unit, both on the field and off, whether we talk about the coaching staff. There was not a unit that looked competent this game. Not one. And now we're going to get through all the games. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about each game as long as, some, but we're going to talk about some of the trade deadline moves. Seeing as though the trade deadline did just happen. But it has to be frightening looking at not just the state of the Cowboys, but the future of it, because the person that is the cause of the state of the Cowboys is also the person that is going to be here for as long as the Cowboys are probably going to be here, and that's Jerry Jones. I'm not saying Jerry Jones is the reason this defense is not that good, especially with Michael Parsons and Dexter Lawrence not being there. Or DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence not being there. I'm not saying it's Jerry Jones' fault that Dak Prescott is now hurt, or CeeDee Lamb is now hurt, who is considered week to week with a shoulder injury. I'm not saying it's Jerry Jones' fault that Ezekiel Elliott misses a bunch of practices and now is away from, like, the team pretty much say, yo, you just get away. I'm not saying that's all on Jerry Jones, but what I am saying is that is all on Jerry Jones. In a sense of, it's shocking that you lose someone like Stephon Gilmore. You come into the season with Trayvon Diggs hurt, Deron Bland hurt, and you don't think to improve the defense. You think that the defense that you had last year, the same defense that got carved up by Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers, you thought that defense was the one that did need to be touched. We were good. I'm not saying it's Jerry Jones' fault that Dak Prescott's hurt. But it is Jerry Jones' fault that the offensive line is not that good. It's also Jerry Jones' fault that there are no, and I mean literally no, weapons at the on the offensive side of the ball outside of, let me say this. Jay Ferguson is a weapon. Jalen Tolbert is a weapon, but there is not a reliable weapon on the offensive side of the ball outside of CeeDee Lamb. That's on Jerry Jones. Because you could have had Derrick Henry. You could have been aggressive. I think that's the frustrating part that Cowboys fans have to go through. And that Cowboys fans continue to lament year after year after year. The top of the food chain, Jerry Jones continues to talk about how aggressive that they want to be and how he loses sleep if they're not in Super Bowl contention. But his actions, the actions of the team, have not shown that what he's saying is actually reality. You had a chance to make your team better several times over. And every single time, you either don't move or you come up short. This You wouldn't have to rely so heavily on a rookie running back or Dalvin Cook or Ezekiel Elliott, two running backs that are well out of their prime, if you would not have been cheap with Derrick Henry. The Falcons are a good team. And the Falcons, we said that they were going into the season, we thought that they were probably going to be the best team in the NFC South. And right now, that's kind of how it's shaping up to be. But there was such a disconnect between how people like analysts and former players and media personality, it was such a stark difference how they viewed the Cowboys compared to how Jerry Jones and the front office and the fans viewed the Cowboys. Because if you ask Jerry Jones, there was nothing wrong with the Cowboys going into the season. You just paid CeeDee Lamb. You just paid Dak Prescott. Both of which, well, one of which was holding out. You still had Michael Parsons. You still had DeMarcus Lawrence. You still had Trayvon. You were good. But everyone that actually covers sports and does that, we're saying, yo, this team, you're playing a dangerous game with this team. Because it doesn't seem like you're trying to get better. And if you want a clear picture of the state of the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more towards the end of the show, but if you want to know the real state of the Dallas Cowboys, put aside the Dak Prescott injury, put aside the poor rushing performances. Again, we will talk about it a little later, but all you need to do is look at that Jonathan Mingo trade deadline move. And that will tell you all you need to know about the Dallas Cowboys. Congratulations to the Falcons, who I'm not ready to call them a Super Bowl caliber team. I don't think they are. I don't think any team that has Kirk Cousins at the helm, a Super Bowl caliber team, but that doesn't, I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins is not good. Kirk Cousins has been great for this Falcons team. But Bijan Robinson has been good. Darnell Mooney has been really good. This team has been really good. And while, yes, there are still major question marks on the defensive side of the ball, this team has been, the Falcons are really good. And the Falcons, in my opinion, at least right now, actually, I don't think, because now you look at the Bucs, the Saints, and the Panthers, I don't think there's any team that's even going to touch. I think the Falcons are going to easily walk into the playoffs because they won their division. So shouts out to the Falcons. But you also saw the team that is going in a direction. You can clearly see the direction that they're going in with the Falcons compared to a team that just seems naive about the situation that they're truly in and oblivious to the situation that they're truly in. So shouts out to the Falcons for beating the Cowboys 27-21. I don't think that there's, while yes, we talked about the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're the only team that's undefeated. They're the only team that has Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But I think that there is a feeling when you watch their games, when you watch them, even though they're undefeated, and I'm not taking away from their record, I'm not taking away from anything they do. But that team doesn't feel unbeatable. Again, Ryan Clark said it. A bunch of people have said it. And this is an indictment on the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, this is they're 8-0. But they don't feel unbeatable. I don't. When I watch the Kansas City Chiefs, while I respect them and while their record is their record, I never feel like I'm watched. At least this year, I never feel like I'm watching the best team in football. I never feel like this team right here is the best that football has to offer. Again, I'm not poo-pooing on the Chiefs. I'm not saying, I am giving them the ultimate respect because I can feel that way, and they're still finding ways to win. And they still have beat quality opponents. But that feeling of, wow, I'm watching probably the best team in football. Wow, this team looks drastically different than any other team. I get that feeling almost every time this year I watch the Detroit Lions. It just feels like they're a step above in every single aspect of the game. Maybe not defense, but we'll talk about that when we get to the trade deadline part, because I think that they have gotten incredibly. I think they just got an incredible boost. But I don't think that there's any question right now that the Detroit Lions is the best team in football. And they beat quality opponents. And they have bludgeoned people. You're seeing, and I'm going to talk about the Ravens in a second, but you're seeing two teams right now that I think are leaps and bounds better in the creative aspect. 3. The Chiefs, the Lions, and the Ravens. I think that those 3 teams, especially when you talk offensively, are just on a different, offensively, creativity-wise, is on a different level because all of them have something that no other team has. Like the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they're able to just do things. He's able to do things that other teams, other quarterbacks can't. The Baltimore Ravens, they have Lamar Jackson. They also have Derrick Henry. Those two, it just opens up an endless amount of possibility because they're able to do things that other teams cannot. And when you talk about this Lions team, you have Jared Goff, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, you have Sam Laporta, you have David Montgomery, you have Tim Patrick, you have Ben Johnson at the helm as the offensive coordinator. When you have that many weapons and couple that with the creativity of an incredible offensive coordinator, there's a reason why these teams, these games that we watch from the Lions look different. They look, you know what it is? We talked about watching the Chiefs and we talked about watching the Lions. And I say that the Chiefs don't look unbeatable. They don't look like the team that their records say they are. And that is a testament to them. The Lions look all of an unbeatable team. Even though they did lose, they do look like they look like the clear-cut best team in football. We're going to talk about the Eagles a little bit in a second, but I don't see a team, at least in the NFC, that is close to this Lions team. I'll say that again. I do not see a team in the NFC that is even close to the Lions. Now, everyone can have a bad game, and that's kind of what I want to talk about with the Green Bay Packers. You can say that it was a bad game. You can say that, well, the weather was bad. It was a a monsoon, essentially, pretty much the entire game. And while, yes, that those situations, those elements does have a impact on the game, what I will say is the same elements that the Green Bay Packers were dealing with were the same elements that the Detroit Lions had to deal with. And you can talk about the numerous, and I think I probably counted about 5 or 6 dropped passes by the Green Bay Packers. A couple of them were touchdowns. But you can talk about that. You can talk about yet another week where Jordan Love throws an inexplicable interception. And most of Jordan Love's interceptions are coming, out of distress, he needs to get out. He's trying to throw. I don't know what he's trying to do, but he threw the interception that essentially turned into a pick six. He threw that same type of interception at least 3 times this year. That's kind of where my hesitations are with the Green Bay Packers. Elements do change the game. I'm not saying they don't. But the elements, you shouldn't look like a drastically different team with heavy rain. And that's kind of what I took out of this game, and that's kind of why I feel more confident with the Detroit Lions. Because they played in the same exact elements, and while there was a little bit of a drop-off, they damn near look like the same team they've been. Jahmyr Gibbs running all over the place. Amon-Ra St. Brown doing stuff like that. Jordan Love is incredible. Jordan Love is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. I don't think that there's any question about that. And I still think that Jordan Love did deserve and has played well after getting the extension. But I think that there is a fatal flaw in his game. And that is some of his decision making. Maybe that comes with experience, that comes with reps. It's technically his second year starting, and it has been a roller coaster because he has missed a couple games due to injury. But some of Jordan Love's decision making is head scratching, to say the least. And when someone like that, as talented as he is the face of your team, is the quarterback of this train, while it has some high highs, it can get you where it needs to go. There is always that question mark in the back of your head, and there's always those instances that could pop saying, yeah, that's why. But congratulations to the Detroit Lions for beating the Green Bay Packers 24-14. I just talked about the Ravens, and I said that we were going to talk about the game a little bit in depth. The Ravens beat the Broncos 41-10. A lot of people are saying that this was a byproduct of the Ravens losing to the Browns last week, and they wanted to take their frustration out on the Broncos. The Ravens, they're such an interesting case because there's no question that the Ravens are a good team. Great team. There's no question that this Ravens team should be considered Super Bowl contenders. Hell, Lamar Jackson didn't even throw 20 passes, and they beat them 41-10. I think he became the first player with 4 perfect passer rating games. He went 16 for 19 for 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think Lamar Jackson, you can argue other people, obviously, but I think Lamar Jackson right now is comfortably in the driver's seat for his 3rd MVP. But what's so interesting about this team is this team has a chance to look like this every single week. But this is one of those interesting games rare games where the final score isn't truly indicative of how the game went. Not saying that it was worse for the Broncos, but it could have been better. The Broncos failed to convert on, I think, 4 fourth downs. A couple of those 4th downs could have been touchdowns. We're in the red zone. So I'm not saying that they would have stopped the Ravens from scoring 41, but I don't think it would have looked this bad. And that's kind of my reservations with the Ravens. Again, we're going to address and talk about the trade deadline at the end, and the Ravens did make a move at the trade deadline. But the Ravens are trying to do something that we haven't really seen. They're trying to take an incredible top 3 offense and carry a bottom 5 defense to a Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, and let's not get it twisted. The Ravens, they're the number 1 rushing defense in football. Number 1. They're also the worst pass defense in football. Now you can look at last week and say Marlon Humphrey didn't play, Nate Wiggins didn't play. Cool. That's still one game. And one game doesn't make you the worst pass defense in football. To put that into perspective, the Ravens' pass defense is worse than the Panthers' pass defense. They're worse than the Titans' pass defense. They're worse than the Washington's pass defense. They're worse than the Jets' pass defense this year. They're worse than the Cowboys. So while, yes, I think the Ravens is a Super Bowl caliber team. I think the Ravens, especially now, when they have their stride, as far as offensively, when Derrick Henry's playing, again, he had 23 carries for 106 yards, 2 touchdowns. When Zay Flowers has emerged as a wide receiver 1, 5 receptions for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now that you have Deontay Johnson, Rashad Bateman is kind of coming into form. You also still have Mark Andrews. You still have Isaiah Likely. You have Bacard. You have Justice Hill. There are so many weapons on this team, offensively at least. Didn't even mention Nelson Aguilar. But if they do win, and obviously we'll talk about it more towards the playoffs or whatever, but it will be extremely unconventional. And they have a chance to do it. But the Ravens beat the Broncos. They destroyed the Broncos. And I think that the AFC North right now is so tight, especially when you talk about the top 2. And we can also talk about the third, because they play tomorrow. They play the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Cincinnati Bengals, they're benefiting off of one of the easiest schedules in football. The Ravens have one of the more difficult schedules in football because they still have to play the Bengals. They still have to play the Steelers twice. I'm not saying that the Ravens aren't going to make the playoffs, but what I'm saying is it could get real tight for them, especially if they lose one of them game. If they lose on Thursday and they also lose one of those games against the Steelers, which if we talk about Lamar Jackson's kryptonite, it has been Patrick Mahomes, the Tennessee Titans, but that was with Derrick Henry, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So we will see, but as of right now, they look damn near unstoppable, even with their defense being as spotty as it is. And for the Broncos, it's crazy, man. When you look at a lot of these young quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson, like a Will Levis, like Bryce Young, and they're having trouble staying, they're having trouble sticking and maintaining being starting quarterbacks. Bo Nix has looked really good. I know a lot of people don't talk about it, but Bo Nix has looked really good for the Broncos. No, I don't think that I owe Sean Payton an apology for me criticizing his whole my way of there. He can have a Super Bowl caliber way of doing things. I just didn't like how he treated Russell Wilson, who was his quarterback. But this Broncos team is really good. They just ran into a juggernaut that is the Ravens. So shouts out to the Ravens for beating the Broncos 41-10. And let me start. Let me start this by saying that Saquon Barkley is a. Okay. So there are. When we use the term physical specimen, what exactly do we mean? We mean that this person is unlike anybody we've seen. This person is unlike. They're physically just different. Like Cam Newton was and probably still is a physical specimen when we talk about a football player. He's tall as hell, he's big as hell, he's fast as hell, physical specimen. LeBron James is a physical specimen. So is Victor Wembanyama. See, two people look drastically different. You can't teach that type of height with that type of athleticism, that type of skill. Victor, LeBron. Not saying that Victor's the second. I'm just saying. Saquon Barkley is a physical specimen. The fact that he can just slide over the fact that he continues to hurdle grown men, but the fact that he did it backwards. I have never seen that in my 30 years of life. I don't even think you can do that in a video game. I don't play Madden, but anyone that plays Madden or even NCAA, I don't think you're able to do that. But this man, Saquon Barkley, leaped over a man backwards. Like, yeah, physical specimen. But let's get back to the game. The Eagles beat the Jaguars 28-23. The thing that I want to talk about with this game is if you needed any example of what people's gripe is or what people's concern, reservations are about Nick Sirianni, this was the game to watch. Because it seemed like, especially in that fourth quarter, almost every decision that Nick Sirianni made put the Eagles in a position to lose the game. Whether you talk about some of those going for it on fourth downs, going for twos. There are some. The Eagles are one of those teams that will have something to say about who will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I think that there are two teams right now that are kind of separating themselves from the pack. That is the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles as far as the NFC. But even in those, there's also a major difference between how the Detroit Lions look coaching wise and how this Eagles team looks coaching wise. This game, if it wasn't for a interception, if it wasn't for a thrown interception by Trevor Lawrence, Nakobe Dean, shouts out to him for catching the interception. But if it wasn't for that, this Jaguars team would have beat the Eagles team in a game where it should not have been anywhere remotely close. And I'm not saying because, Jalen Hurts was playing bad no, it was just the decision making, the clock management. It seemed like almost everything that the Eagles did in that fourth quarter was going against their goal to win the game. I have faith that this Eagles team is good enough to at least make it to a Super Bowl. While I'm not saying they're better than the Lions, I do. In any given Sunday, you never know. It's one game. Jared Goff can have a bad game. Someone can get hurt. Knock on wood. You hope that doesn't happen. But with the pieces that this team has, with the roster that this team is, the Eagles will. I have confidence that they're good enough to make a Super Bowl. And I'm also confident that they're good enough to win a Super Bowl. When you look at when you look at this roster, what I am not confident in is the decision making of their coach. And this game should have shown you the highs and the lows. Highs, Saquon Barkley hopping over somebody backwards. Devontae Smith having one of the catches of the year, catching a one-handed touchdown. Flying out of bounds. Jalen Hurts, 230 yards. But then it just felt like there was such a disconnect between what this team did to build the lead and what this team was doing to try to secure it. Because they were playing like a desperate team while up big. And some of their desperate moves didn't even need to happen. So I agree with a lot of people in saying that the only really question mark with this team, especially this roster, healthy roster, is will the coach and his decision making get in their way? Because it sure as hell seemed like it was about to against the Jaguars on Sunday. Again, if it wasn't for a poorly thrown ball or maybe a blown route, I don't know. But it didn't seem like Trevor Lawrence and the receiver he was trying to throw to was on the same page. So if it wasn't for a bad thrown ball by Trevor Lawrence, the Eagles would have lost this game, and there would have been much different talking points coming out of this game. But I don't know. If was a fifth, you know what I mean? Shouts out to the Eagles for beating the Jaguars 28-23. There are a lot of indications as to the state of a team, the state of a locker room. There's a lot of ways that you can tell the strength or weakness of a locker room, of a team. A lot of ways. Some ways is by winning streaks and losing streaks. sometimes the locker room can be. I'm not saying that winning streaks and losing streaks are always going to be the case, because you can have a toxic locker room, but your team is just better than everyone else's. They're just going to go out and beat everyone else. Or you can have the best locker room in the world. You just don't have the players, and you can lose damn near every game, but the locker room is still strong. So that's not always an indication. What is always an indication of how strong your locker room is, though, is the quote-unquote leaks and comments that come out of your own locker room. I can't get over the fact, and I will continue to scream it from the rafters. There was a point in time, a very small point, but a point in time where this Saints team was looked at as one of the best teams in football. Albeit it was 2 weeks, but still, what they did to the Cowboys and how they looked the first 2 games of the season, you would think that this team was going to be destined for greatness this year. But as we sit here now, the Saints have extended their losing streak to 7 after they lost to the Panthers 23-22. Dennis Allen got fired quickly after this game. Actually, he got fired the next day. And you know what's crazy? While yes, I think that one of the main reasons why he got fired was because they lost to the then 1-7 Panthers. You essentially lost to the worst team in football. Let alone, I understand it's a divisional game, but still, they're the worst team in football. But I think one of the biggest reasons why he got fired was the comments that came out of the locker room. The Saints, it is such a night and day difference of how they were to start the season compared to where they are now. Yes, Derek Carr got hurt a good portion of those games, but still. Derek Carr played against the Panthers and still 18 for 31, 236 yards, 1 touchdown. Alvin Kamara, 29 carries, 155 yards. They outgained them. The Saints outgained the Panthers by damn near double, and they still lost. Now you have former players like Michael Thomas come out. Chris Olave goes out. So Michael Thomas just goes on a rampage on Twitter about, his relationship with Derek Carr and how Derek Carr isn't as good as people say they are, and how Derek Carr does not have the best interest of his wide receivers, throwing up essentially hospital balls, And then I don't remember his name, but you have the defensive player that is currently on the team that just played in this game being critical on social media with this team. Again, man, winning streaks and losing streaks can tell you a lot about a team. And it also tells you a lot about the leaders of a team. I have been a supporter, sort of Derek Carr. I was on that boat saying that a lot of stuff that happened with the Raiders was because of the Raiders organization. And we're going to talk about the Raiders shortly. But a lot of things that happened to Derek Carr was about the Raiders and the organization and how the organization essentially didn't help him. Now, yes, they did get Devontae Adams, but I was too little too late. But I do think it's interesting that this is the second time that Dennis Allen has been fired, and both times Derek Carr was the starting quarterback. Not saying that Derek Carr asked for him to be fired or demanded he was being fired. But I do think that this, I talked about this in the season preview, bro. Like, every year the Saints have the roster to be good, and every year they let us down. And I thought, silly me, I thought that this was going to be the year. After those first 2 weeks, I put out clips. I said it on the podcast, man. I said that this is going to be different. I was wrong. You lost to a Panthers team that doesn't even know who their starting quarterback. They had Bryce Young as their starting quarterback. The same Bryce Young they benched for Andy Dalton. And I think the only reason why he's playing is because Andy Dalton got into a car accident. Oh, man. It is such it. I'm sure it is tough. Obviously, the checks are cool, but I'm sure it's tough being a Saint right now. So, and shouts out to the Panthers, man. Like, when you have, it's very easy to just pack. I know it's a divisional game, but it's very easy to just pack it up and be like, yo, we're 1-7 at this time. Nah, bro, season's over. And essentially you aren't playing for much of anything, but to go in and beat the Saints. Dog, the Saints and the Panthers have the same the Saints and the Panthers have the same record. Both 2-7 now. Shouts out to the Panthers for beating the Saints 23-22. The Buffalo Bills beat the Dolphins 30-27. Again, I'm going to talk about the trade deadline and give it his own section of the episode, but I was a little shocked and surprised that the Dolphins were weren't active at the trade deadline, whether as sellers and as buyers, because as we look, the season is essentially over for the Dolphins. You lost to the Bills twice. The Bills are 7-2. I think you're the worst. You're tied for the worst, or not tied. You have the worst record in the division. Even though Tua is back, that obviously doesn't matter. This team's not good. And while, yes, you can say that a lot of it was because Tua was out, but even in this game, you take the lead, and then your defense fails to... Yo, Brandon Bass, the same Brandon Bass that lost them a game in the playoffs, Brandon Bass kicks a 61-yard field goal. And the fact that he was able to get to that 61-yard, like it... I'm sure that they're going to say that this is a failed season because of the injury to Tua. And that's understandable. But I think that is an easy cop-out. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Tua and his health. I mean that as a lot of the issues that this team is dealing with, I don't think Tua... Yes, I think if Tua played most of the season, the record would be different. But I don't know. I wouldn't consider the Dolphins a Super Bowl caliber team. So, and you're talking now. You played a Bills team that you surprisingly I think is a Super Bowl caliber team, and I say surprisingly because of all the moves that they saw and all the players that they saw leave their team in the offseason. Josh Allen is playing himself into MVP conversation. Actually, he is in MVP conversations. Again, even though Amari Cooper didn't play, his relationship and his connection with Keon Coleman continues to grow. I don't know. I don't know if the Bills. I think their rushing defense can definitely come back to bite them. Uh, I mean, when you see what the Dolphins, even though they aren't huge numbers, Devon Achane did have 12 carries for 63 yards. While you can say those were good, a lot of those 63 yards came in big moments of the game. And then you saw what Derrick Henry. Now, obviously that's Derrick Henry, but you saw what he did to the Bills. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they're not good, and I'm not saying that they essentially couldn't. They do have the Chiefs in a couple weeks, but I'm just saying. I think if they don't address their rushing defense, which I mean at this point you just got to get a free agent or something. I don't know, but they did beat the Dolphins. So shouts out to the Bills for beating the Dolphins 30-27. You know, it's funny, man. Football is such an unforgiving sport. I kind of look at it the same way I look at the UFC in fighting. You can be on top of the world one week, one fight, and then the next fight, the next week, you can lose badly, and everyone turns on you, or everyone just forgets about what happened. I kind of feel that way with the Browns. The Chargers beat the Browns 27-10, and all that hope that the Browns had last year or last episode, Jesus loves you, last week when they beat the Ravens, and the offense looked better under Jameis Winston, and it just looked like a complete team. All of that hope was dashed with them losing to the Chargers. And Jameis Winston looking like Jameis Winston. Bro, Jameis Winston threw 3 interceptions, I believe, this game. And I think he has over 100 interceptions across his career. And I'm not now. It still looked a little different, and there was still a little bit more pop in the offense, but this offense didn't look drastic. It didn't look drastically different than it did with Deshaun Watson, at least on Sunday. I'm not saying that Jameis Winston isn't a better option, at least right now, for Deshaun Watson, but a lot of that hope that the fans were trying to cling on to, and a lot of that hope that was built up last week beating a top-tier team like the Ravens was quickly dashed by this Chargers team. And I still don't know about this Chargers team. Because, I mean, they have the numbers, right? Justin Herbert threw for 282 yards, 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnston had a good game. 4 receptions, 118 yards, 1 touchdown. J.K. Dobbins, 14 carries, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cool. But are you going to be able to do that against a top-tier talent? I know you're 5-3, cool. But I know you play the Ravens in a couple weeks. That's going to say a lot. I just don't know about this Chargers team. I don't know if I don't really trust them. But they did beat the Browns. So shouts out to the Browns shouts out to the Chargers for beating the Browns 27-10. The Commanders beat the Giants 27-22. And it is crazy, and it's so beautiful to watch how much this Commanders team trusts Jaden Daniels. And the connection that he has with this team, now the connection that he has with this city in Washington, it's a beautiful thing. And I don't mean that in a funny way. I honestly mean it's crazy how one person has Now, yes, I understand it's also been a ownership change and GM change. I get it. But it's so interesting how one player has changed not just the fortune of a team in a city, in an area, in a fandom, but the feel of the area, the feel of the team is just different. Bro, I don't think anyone, even you can even ask Washington fans. I don't think anyone thinks that Washington is a Super Bowl contender. I think that they can make a deep playoff run, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. Like if you go up against, I think we're really going to see a lot about how good this team is when they play the Eagles. But they beat the Giants 27-22, and Jaden Daniels didn't have the greatest game, but had a good game. 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin had 2 touchdowns for like 14 yards. It's just different. It feels different, and it's a great feeling as a fan and as someone taking my bias out, just watching it, because the Commanders play in such a way that is devastating for a lot of teams. The way they can, it's crazy how much poise Jaden Daniels has, because in this game, it wasn't really Jaden, it was the running game. And this is even without Brian Robinson, who didn't play. Austin Eckler was good, and it was great. I know it's just the Giants, and the Giants aren't nearly as good as they would like to be. But right now, Washington is 7-2, and shouts out to Washington for beating the Giants 27-22. This is why I said that the NFC North is going to be. AFC. The AFC North is going to be such a interesting division to watch towards the end of the stretch, because you have 2 teams right now that are above 500. You have 2 teams right now that are obviously looking down at everybody. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's number 1 in the division, and the Baltimore Ravens. But then you have the Bengals that have an easy schedule, that have one of, if not the easiest schedule remaining. I know they have to play the Ravens on Thursday, tomorrow, but the Bengals beat the Raiders 41-24. Joe Burrow had 5 touchdowns. And I know Chase Brown went out, but what I'm saying is this team, this Bengals team is interesting. They have, obviously they started off. I wouldn't, especially when you look at defensively. I wouldn't put them up against defensively. I don't know how they're gonna stop a lot of teams, especially the Ravens. But offensively, they still have Joe Burrow. They still have, oh man, damn, Chase Brown had 27 carries for 120 yards. Damn. They also had like 6 sacks or 5 sacks or something, but that is a testament to how bad of an offensive line the Raiders are. And this Raiders team is not a good team, like, at all. Oh yes, Jacoby Myers is cool. Brock Bowers has emerged as one of the best tight ends in football, even in his rookie year. They're not a good team. They have Max Crosby, but that's about it on the defensive side. They have 3 players. Like, it's not a good team. But I am very interesting. I am very interested to see how the Bengals could sneak into the playoffs, man. And I think Dan Orlovsky said that the Joe Burrow is one of the quarterbacks that the Chiefs don't want to play. I don't know about that, especially when you look at this offensive line. Yeah, but The Bengals could sneak into the playoffs at the wild card spot. In fact, let me see something, because I do want to see what the Bengals have remaining schedule-wise. All right, so you got the Ravens, Chargers. Okay, let's say I think they might lose to the Ravens. They could beat the Chargers. You could beat the Steelers. You're definitely going to beat the Cowboys. You can beat the Titans. You can beat the Browns. Yeah, they could go 6, 7, 8. They can go 7-8 these next few games. 7-1 these next few games. So, yeah, man, it's going to be an interesting ending. But they did beat the Raiders, and the Raiders. Oh boy, that's another team I'm going to talk about at the trade deadline spot. But congratulations to the Bengals for beating the Raiders 42-24. So. The Vikings beat the Colts 21-13. Now, the Vikings were going into the game on a 2-game losing streak. The Colts just benched Anthony Richardson and promoted Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback, probably for the remainder of the season, I think what the report said. Yes, we talked about it ad nauseum. I'm not going to continue to talk about it. I do think Anthony Richardson, if you look at his play, deserved to be benched. But for people that's saying that Anthony Richardson being benched was going to change the fortune of the Colts was very wrong. The Colts are still not that good. The Colts aren't good at all. Like, they're still dealing with a lot of injury, and you're going up against a team which they could have beat. They were going up against a team that, I'll say this. Sam Darnold, cool game. 290 yards, 3 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson had 7 receptions for 137 yards. I don't think this offense is good enough to go far in the playoffs. This defense is, but I don't think the offense is. Sam Darnold is playing incredible. I think that Sam Darnold has a shot to probably win Comeback Player of the Year, seeing as how good he's playing. But you almost lost to a Colts team that is lacking a lot of their important piece on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, no. I know it's still football. I know it's any given Sunday, but I don't think that the Colts should have put up that big of a issue or that big of a challenge to the Vikings. And for the people that said that all the Colts issues are solved with Joe Flacco, not at all. Not at all. Joe Flacco still turns the ball over a lot. Yeah. So, but shouts out to the Vikings for beating the Colts 21-13. Y'all know on this podcast, and I feel like I have to say this a lot. Y'all know on this podcast that I'm not one of the people that is quick to get somebody fired or quick to say someone needs to be fired. I'm one of the people that put a lot more onus on the players more than the coaches, even though the coaches are important. But the Cardinals beat the Bears 29-9. And it seems like the healthier the Bears have gotten, even though Caleb Williams did re-aggravate his twisted ankle, the healthier the Bears have gotten, and as the weeks have gone by, the Bears have gotten worse. Yo, don't get me wrong, man. And I said this, the Cardinals have been playing much better than I thought they would. The Cardinals have been much, especially when you talk about defensively, they're a young team that probably will be good moving forward, but I didn't think that this was going to be the year. But you lost to that team. And it didn't even look close. Mind you, the Bears' defense is projected to be better than the Cardinals. The offense is projected to be better than the Cardinals. You have the number 1 overall pick. You have Rome Odunze. You have Keenan Allen. You have DJ Moore, who walked off the field. Walked off the field mid-play. You didn't think I wasn't going to let that slide. You walked off the field mid-play, DJ. I don't know why. I don't know. But you did. We saw it. We saw it. But this is a bigger issue in Chicago, man. When you have a player ask, do you think that Matt Eberflus, who was the head coach, do you think he lost the locker room? And DJ Moore goes, I want to say no. What does that mean? I want to say no. I'm not saying that Matt Eberflus is a bad coach, but if your scheme doesn't match the talents of your players, that's one of the biggest issues I had with Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson. I'm not saying that it was all on Kevin Stefanski, but it didn't seem like Kevin Stefanski's scheme matched the talents and the best parts of Deshaun Watson's game. And Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year, so I'm not saying he's a bad coach. But what I'm just saying is every player is different. I'm sure the scheme and the way that the Baltimore Ravens run their offense is different than what the Chiefs do. Stuff Lamar Jackson does, Patrick Mahomes cannot duplicate, and vice versa. A lot of things that Patrick Mahomes does, Lamar Jackson cannot duplicate. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like this is a good offensive scheme for Caleb Williams or for this team. And it just seems like week after week, the offense gets worse. Mind you, we could all be talking about this differently if the Hail Mary didn't happen last week, but it did. So I'm not saying you fire Matt Eberflus now. I wouldn't do it middle of the season, but I would say that he's one of those. If there's anything close to a lock, I think that you can lock it in that Matt Eberflus probably will not be here next year as the head coach. So, but yeah, shouts out to the Cardinals for beating the Bears 29-9. Oh man, the Rams beat the Seahawks 26-20. It's very hard. It's not hard, and then it's hard to evaluate the Rams. When I say it's not hard, Matthew Stafford is a future Hall of Famer. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, at least in the NFC. Even at his old age, even with the wear and tear on his body, he's still one of the most clutch quarterbacks. I think that this Rams team that's still riddled with injury, I think that when they have their full complementary of offensive pieces, when we talk about Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, this team is just different. Now, yes, Puka Nacua did get ejected because he wanted to go virtual fighter on one of the Seahawks defenders, but Denard Robinson caught the game-winning one-handed, for all my YouTube viewers, you can see it right there, one-handed catches. Incredible. It's also not hard to understand that Sean McVay is one of the best creative coaches in football, and it wouldn't be wise to count out the Rams quite yet. But there's always a flip side to that coin. The flip side is the Rams are also 4-4. I think they're second. They're tied with second in their division, which is crazy because the Cardinals is the top team in the division right now. Yes, this team is riddled with injury. That is, as much as it's a strength for Matthew Stafford to shine, it is also a true thing. And on top of that, while you don't want to count out Matthew Stafford and this Rams team, I wouldn't pick them over a lot of people. I would not pick hell no, because they're just not healthy. And you beat a Seahawks team that, yeah, you had to come back. They were down 10 points. They were down, actually. Yeah, they were down a couple points. Is that 0? Yeah. They were down 10 points going into half. And it took a one-handed Denard Robinson catch to beat them in overtime. I think that they're an okay team. They're okay to good, and the only reason why I say too good is because you have Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, and Cooper Kupp. You also have Kyron Williams, who's pretty cool, pretty good. So they make you a okay to good team, but I don't think that alone is going to. And even with that, those players combined, I don't think they're good enough to really make moves or make a deep run in the playoffs. Especially when you put them up against a team like the Commanders or a team like, they did get bludgeoned by the Cardinals this year, but it was also, they were out both their wide receivers. So, yeah. But they did beat the Seahawks. And for the Seahawks, man, this is yet another game where Geno Smith has monster numbers. 363 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker, 25 carries for 83 yards. Jackson Smith-Njigba had 7 receptions for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he essentially had the touchdown to send it to overtime. But this is yet another game where, how many? Hold up. Let me just be. How many interceptions did he have? He had a pick 6, by the way. But how many interceptions did Geno Smith throw? Or how many turnovers did Geno Smith? He had 3 interceptions. And I think one of them was a pick 6. It's like his QBR was 20.7. He had 360 yards, 63 yards, but was sacked 7 times. Now, people are going to say, well, DK didn't play. DK shouldn't drastically change the fortunes of a team like that. Don't get me wrong, DK's good, but come on, man. That's why, what are they right now? They're 4-5 right now. They were one of the last, I think they were like 3-0. One of the last unbeatens, and then now they're 4-5. Shouts out to the Rams for beating the Seahawks. Was that? Yep. Yo, I will say this. The Titans beat the Patriots 20-17 in overtime. Drake May threw a game-sealing interception in overtime. But I will say that Drake May has played really well as a starting quarterback. Drake May is it's the peaks and valleys of the NFL season, game. He led them and carried them to overtime. It kind of felt like a one-man band, essentially. But he's also the reason why they lost in overtime. The Patriots don't have much. Like they're not that good, man. At all. This is a down year for them, obviously. This is a rebuild year, but yeah. You lost to Mason Rudolph. Shouts out to the Titans for beating the Patriots 20-17. And that has been week, 9? I do want to talk about the trade deadline, and we have seen some moves. I want to talk about some. I'm not going to talk about every move. I want to talk about some that I think are going to be make dividends, or Let's first talk about, in my opinion, the biggest move, and the move that I think is going to have the most return, and that is Zadarius Smith getting traded to the Lions. We all knew that this was going to happen. Ever since Aiden Hutchinson went out for the season, we knew that the Lions were in the market for a pass rusher, and one of the best ones that they could have got was Zadarius Smith. So there's no shocker that Zadarius Smith is now a Lion. I think it's a test that once you're there, and we talk about this a lot. We talk about the Super Bowl window, right? The Lions Super Bowl window is open right now. They are in pretty much. It's felt like they're the best team in football. When you are close, when that window is open, you do everything that you can to keep it open. If you want a prime example of what that means, look at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals went to a Super Bowl against the Rams. While they didn't win, you thought the Super Bowl was going to be open for a while. Hell, even Joe Burrow said the Super Bowl window is open as long as I'm here. I'm like, oh, okay, big man. They ain't been to a Super Bowl since. So you want to do everything in your power to make you a Super Bowl caliber team, and the Lions losing someone like Aiden Hutchinson, their best defensive player, is the difference between Super Bowl and not. So the fact that they were able to get Zadarius Smith, that is probably the best move of the day. That is the best trade. They got arguably the best player that they could, and that's an A. I'm not gonna do all grades or something, but that's an A. You don't let that. Again, Super Bowl windows are open for a short amount of time, a lot shorter than people think, and you don't want it to close because you didn't do your due diligence. You didn't try everything that you could. You didn't throw everything to the wall. Hell, we talk about that same Super Bowl. The Rams Super Bowl window was open. They did everything they could, got Odell Beckham Jr., got Von Miller, and they won. And now that Super Bowl window is closed. But they got that Super Bowl. So I think Zadarius Smith, that is the Lions understanding, we need to try everything we can because this is our window. This is our chance. And I think getting Zadarius Smith was probably the best move. The best move of the day. I think the second best move went to my Washington Commanders. You don't get a player like Marshawn Lattimore, right? You don't get a player like Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints if you don't think that you're good enough to make a deep run. Yes, you can be 7-2. Yes, you can have, a great quarterback. But if you don't think that you're good enough, you wouldn't make that Marshawn Lattimore move because he drastically changes the feel and the second unit or secondary unit. He is now, yes, he is dealing with injury right now, but he is a game changer. And this is Washington saying, we understand where we are right now. We want to go for it. And that is a move like Marshawn Lattimore. That's exactly what that means. So I love it. I love it. It just shows, again, you don't want to. You know what I love? You know what I hate about rebuilds? Some rebuilds just last forever. Like the Chicago Bulls. When are they going to stop rebuilding? When is the rebuild going to finally get to the point where they're a good team? At some point, Washington's in a good position right now. And it's like, we don't want to. I know that they probably didn't think they were going to be as good as they were this year or as good as they are this year. So now that we're here, let's make the best of it. Even if they don't win a Super Bowl, even if we don't get to the Super Bowl, let's at least try. Because we're a lot better and a lot closer than we thought we would be. So getting Marshawn Lattimore is a testament to that. The Ravens, they already got Deontay Johnson, but they got Shadarius White. I if they could have, we know the biggest issue, and I talked about the biggest issue with the Ravens is their secondary and their pass defense. The two best ways that you can attack that is a pass rusher and get a cornerback. Now, a lot of people were saying the issue with the Ravens is more of the pass rush than the cornerback, because you still have Nate Wiggins, you still have you still have Marlon Humphreys, you still have Stevens. Like they're okay cornerbacks. It's just and Kyle Hamilton at the safety position, but I thought that it would have been a little better if they went to get a pass rusher. Maybe they tried and they couldn't. I don't know, but I think Tre'Davious White, I'm sorry, he's not in the prime that he used to be, obviously. And the fact that the Rams are desperately in need of a cornerback and they let one go for essentially a pick swap shows you they kind of gave up on him as well. So I don't know. Maybe he can tap into the fountain of youth and get back to where he was, but I don't know. I don't think that was a game-changing move. I don't think the Ravens needed a game-changing move, but they definitely need a pass rusher. There are still, now obviously the trade deadline's over. There are still people, like you maybe go get Randy Gregory. I thought that they were in prime position to get someone like a Jadeveon Clowney, but obviously I was wrong. But yeah, I think they got better. I just don't think it was marginally better. I think it was just small, but shouts out to him. Now there are teams that I don't understand why they stood pat. Like the Raiders. Why are the Raiders are staying pat? I don't get that. You're not like, I don't understand why the Dolphins. You don't really have many picks, so go get some. The Raiders don't have many picks, so go get some. The Giants. The Giants had a plethora of people that other teams could use for picks, and the Giants, they're bottom feeders. I don't understand why they stayed pat. I'm not saying you trade your best players, but a team like the Dolphins, you're not doing anything with, you're not a Super Bowl caliber team with Tyreek Hill. Why do you still have Tyreek Hill if you don't have any draft picks? The Giants had a plethora of defensive players. Like that pass rush, I don't remember the dude's name, but someone that the Ravens wanted. Why not get a draft pick or two? I don't know. But I think the worst, and like I kind of teed it up when I was talking about the Cowboys and the Falcons. If you want to know the state of the Cowboys, just look at that Jonathan Mingo trade that they did. They spent more. If you talk about trades and everything, or we talk about drafting stuff, they gave the Panthers more for Jonathan Mingo than the Chiefs gave the Titans for DeAndre Hopkins. Meaning, if you would have been aggressive, you probably could have got DeAndre Hopkins. That's one. Two, your quarterback, your starting quarterback, is on IR the same day you trade for a wide receiver. Now you can say that this is for the future, but Jonathan Mingo ain't that. Like I don't know if you've watched Jonathan Mingo, but he ain't that. And while yes, the Bengals, one of their biggest issues outside of the defense and the offensive line, one of their biggest issues is running back. They addressed it by getting the running back from the Bears, Khalil, I forgot his last name, Khalil Herbert. They got him they addressed one of their biggest needs. What is the biggest need, at least right now, for the Cowboys? It is their running game. What do you think? Now, I understand that they don't really have many other pieces at the wide receiver position outside of CeeDee Lamb, but they don't have anybody at the running back position. So what? It just seems like bad decisions. On top of that, the Cowboys season is essentially over, and they don't have many. Why not sell high? Why not shop maybe a Zach Martin? Why not shop a DeMarcus Lawrence? Why not shop one of your? You didn't shop anyone, so now you don't have many draft picks. You gave up more for Jonathan Mingo than you had to. You got Jonathan Mingo when you need a running game. Man. It don't make sense. It don't make sense. On top of that, the Cowboys have defensive issues, and you didn't get a defensive player. Well, that was the trade deadline. Came and went again. I was shocked, but some teams didn't. Was inactive. Shocked about the Cowboys, and I think that moves like what Za'Darius Smith going to the Lions, Marshawn Lattimore going to Commanders, and I'll say I'm not gonna say that's one of the best. I think that those two were probably the best moves of the day. So, shouts out to them. Let's kind of go to the collegiate. Let's go to college football for a second, and the college football playoff rankings came out, and there wasn't much secret. I mean, the top 10: Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, Miami, Texas, Penn State, Tennessee, Indiana, BYU, and Notre Dame. I think Oregon has kind of separated themselves from the pack, I don't think that there's much separation between any of these teams. Even Oregon, to an extent. I mean, I know they beat Ohio State, which was their biggest win, obviously, of this year, but they beat them because the Ohio State dude slid when he pulled a Dak Prescott. The committee really likes the SEC. Like, they let's see. So it's obviously a 12-team playoff. In the playoffs right now, if it were to start right now, Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama. Four teams in the SEC would have made the college football playoffs. And on top of that, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, three teams would have been in the Big Ten. So, is Indiana in the Big Ten? Maybe Indiana. What I'm saying is this. There's not much separation between these teams. There's a lot of really good teams like Oregon, Ohio State. Like, there's a lot of really good teams. I don't think there's a great team, and that obviously what adds on to the parity of college football, which we've seen the last few years. I think that this is an interesting season. It's going to be very interesting to come down to which teams, what they do, and who bounces who. What I think is going to be very either beneficial or not beneficial for teams is matchups. Wherever they land in the college football playoffs, yeah. Like, think about this. Oregon, right now, they pretty much have a fast track to the Big Ten championship. I think they'll have to see, I don't know, they might have to see Ohio State again. But if they do, there's a good chance, and if they do win the Big Ten, there's a great chance they're going to be the number one seed. They're going to have a bye to and the first game they play could be against Alabama. Like, the first game they play could be against, let's say, Tennessee or Texas. Like, that's, so it's going to be very interesting what this college football playoffs hold. So, but the first official rankings came out, and there's really no surprise outside of, I think it's interesting that while Oregon is ranked number one, the bettors and all the analytics are pretty much saying that Ohio State is the best team and Ohio State is going to win the national championship, even though Oregon beat them. And they still think, even with how much they've looked bad offensively and losing to Alabama, they still think that Georgia is still one of them teams, which I'm not against because they also did just thrax Texas. I'm very interested about Miami being number 4. I think rightfully so. They're 9-0, but damn near every game they're down double digits. And Cam Ward just continues to shine, but almost every game they are down double digits and they have to come back. I don't know how much that's gonna last, but we'll see. I'm very interested to see what happens with this college football playoff. And lastly, before we go, we have the unpopular topic of the day. And I want to kind of combine two topics. I want to combine two topics in the, I want to combine what happened with Joel Embiid and the reporter and combined it with what happened with the back and forth between Kevin Durant and Stephen A. Smith. For people that don't know, a little bit of backstory. A reporter had some things to say about Joel Embiid's inactivity due to injury and how he is not always available. And the reporter also stated some of Joel Embiid's motivations for the season, one being the death of his child. And he also talked about, I think, the death of his brother. Oh, no, not the death of his brother and, his child. His child did not die. I apologize. I said that wrong. It was the death of his brother and his child. His child, Joel Embiid's child, did not die. It was the death of his brother. I apologize. I did not mean to. I said that wrong. And Joel Embiid had some. He was quite unhappy about that, and there was a bit of a back and forth, a little bit of an altercation after the game. In the same time, I think Stephen A. Smith questioned the leadership of Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant essentially called him a clown and pretty much talked down on Stephen A. Smith's journalistic integrity, let's say that. What I think a lot of these journalists don't understand or forget at times is how powerful they are, in both a negative and a positive way. You see, a lot of people are going to take what a reporter says, and they're going to run with it faster than anything that a player is going to say. Because 9 times out of 10, most of the we hear the reporter, we read the reporter, and we don't hear from the athlete. We don't have to hear from the athlete. That's their prerogative. And we're essentially in a day and age where a lot of people think a reporter's finding a reporter's words is law. And you have to understand that your words is the most powerful thing that can be told. And you don't have to get personal to tell your side of the story. I'm sure the article didn't have to include a dead family member and a child from Joel Embiid to insinuate or to further explain the fact that Joel Embiid isn't always available. Joel Embiid got suspended 3 games for that. He had a physical altercation with the reporter. And while I understand the suspension, it's a bad look on the NBA, and they don't want themselves to look bad. I get it. I also understand, and I fully support what Joel Embiid did, because it's like, you don't know these people personally. You may have sources, and your sources may know them personally, but you don't know these people personally. So what gives you the right to talk about something that is personal to them? Stephen A. Smith is one of the, if not the best face of sports media right now. And we also know that Kevin Durant, and that's no offense to him, it's true, Kevin Durant has been sensitive. He's probably been sensitive ever since the whole Golden State move, and rightfully so. I'm not saying his sensitivity is wrong. I'm just saying that's what it is. But you're not whatever sources you get, cool, but you're not a local media. The difference between national media and local media is there damn near every day, if not every day. Reporters after practice, travel with the team. Local media is there every day. National is only there when the national spotlight is on them, meaning there's something that happens with them or there's a game. So, how do you know Kevin Durant's leadership? How does anyone know the leadership of? How do you know that Kevin Durant isn't the best leader that we've ever seen, just in his own way? Everyone's opinion matters, right? It just may not matter to other people, and that is okay. And it also, just because it's your opinion and you may hear it from a source, what makes that source credible to tell me or to tell you how my leadership style is? I think, let's bring it personally. When I play I think I'm a really good leader. I'm not boisterous. I do get upset. When I get upset, I get upset. But I'm more lead by example, you know? I'm more let my game do the leading. I have a friend of mine who's more boisterous, who's more yelling, rah, rah, rah. And you would think, but does that make him better leader? Steph Curry is, I'm sure, not the same leader that LeBron James or Kobe Bryant was. Rest in peace. Does that make him a bad leader? What I'm saying is, and in closing, you have to understand that your words are strong. And now more than ever, a reporter's words are going to go further than the athlete's words. So when you talk about an athlete's dead relative and child for no reason, essentially, don't be surprised if you're going to get backlash from it. Don't be surprised if he's going to see about it. And for Stephen A. Smith, I think Stephen A. Smith is an inspiration, man. I think Stephen A. Smith is one of the best media, one of the best reporters of all time. But I do think that it's challenging. You have to ask yourself how can you make grand statements about someone or something that you don't see every day, you don't have a close-knit relationship with? And it's not just on Stephen A., because a lot of people do this. I'm giving my opinions about what I see. Me. I have a sports podcast. I give my opinions about what I see and how I feel about what I see. One thing that I will never do, and if I have done it, I apologize. But one thing I try not to do, and I don't ever see myself dipping into that realm, is getting personal with anyone, because I don't know any of these people personally. Even if I have a source, I may know that source personally. That source may know whoever we're talking about personally, but I don't know them personally. So I would never have the goal to talk about a man's dead relative and child, or to make a grand statement about somebody personally when I don't know them. Especially when everyone around me has said, well, I don't know if that's true. I haven't heard one person say from Phoenix that Kevin Durant is a bad leader. You know who I did hear that from? Stephen A. Smith. That's all I'm saying, man. We just got to be careful, bro. I understand why Joel Embiid was suspended, but I also understand why he did what he did, and I fully support it. Just be careful. Your word, now more than ever, reporters, analysts' words are powerful. And there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate all of you guys. If you like the content, tell a friend and tell a friend and tell a friend to subscribe. Definitely means a lot. Also, from my DSP listeners, that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you get your DSPs and wherever you're listening to me, please follow or subscribe. It definitely means a lot. I appreciate all of my supporters, and I appreciate everyone that's entertained by me, so please subscribe. Also, please follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily there. If you want reels, stories, go back and forth with me, that's probably the quickest way to get to me. Follow the socials. It definitely means a lot. Until next time, much love.